Welcome to the April 29th, 2013 Budget Committee, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Chair, point of order, if I could. Can we have a moment of silence for the people in Boston?
Certainly.
Everybody agree to that, or?
Absolutely.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, first on the agenda is to welcome Cliff Chase as the school board rep.
Thank
Welcome,
you.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Great to be here.
Yeah, this is great. This is be really helpful as we move through the budget season, and I think we'll talk about it later, but I think there'll be a lot of school issues on the next agenda, so we can talk a little bit about that as we go along, but welcome and glad you're here. You do have an alternate, is that right, in case?
I do.
At this point, I think it's Meg and...
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, that's what I understand. Okay, very good. Okay, next is, is to approve the May 25th meeting minutes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of March 25th of 2013.
Second.
Second by Russ. I forgot to do one thing. Any discussion or changes?
It's one page.
Yeah, this was one where we were not live, and it was
It's not
some
23.
notes that Drew took. Thank you, and Ellen polished them up. So thank you to both of you for doing that.
I like this one.
Me too.
All in favor of approving the minutes as written, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
And
Abstentions? You were
would
not.
be me.
So Cliff would abstain. Which reminds me that we have one, Judy Ryan is excused. She is out of the country. Everybody else is present. Okay, so the next item is that as you know, we have one vacancy on the Budget Committee. Due to the election of Larry Pickering to both Budget and Council, and he elected to take the Council and is now back with us as a Council rep. So that worked out.
but we won't take it personally that you chose him.
So the way So the way we approach this is we posted the vacancy for a couple weeks, and have two applicants who we invited tonight, Roseanne Quox and Michael Lang. So thank you both for coming. And this is sort of a first for us, so I think we'll work through this process. And everybody should have the applications that they submitted. And we did not really have a specific submittal that we required, so this is an opportunity for us to ask a few questions if we like of the applicants, or have each of them come forward to the podium. If you think that would be a
Should we put their names
appropriate
in
time.
motion first? Even though they're submitted, we have to accept them. The nominations?
I don't know that we have to do that, but there are two applicants to a vacant position. I think we have flexibility in how we approach the process. So I don't think they're being nominated for the position. I think they've applied, and we'll ask them questions and they can speak to us, and then we're going to vote on appointing one of the folks to the position. We're not nominating them to an unelected position per se. We're going through Michael, would you like to come up to the podium, and we can people can ask questions, or how would we like to proceed? Does anybody have any?
I have
Okay, Dana.
Mike, thank you for submitting your application.
You're welcome.
One of the questions I have is I don't see any previous experience on any other boards or any other committees. Where do you feel your qualifications are for this?
Well, I knew that was going to come up, and I think the experience kind of puts me at a loss against Roseanne, because she has a lot more experience on me. However, I did try to run for the school board. I was voted down. I think I did that to myself. Running, I didn't leave myself open to, all ideas. I was kind of jaded towards one. But I think, kind of re-prepping myself, for running for the Budget Committee, I kind of put Newmarket at the forefront. It wasn't about myself or my, goals. It's for the town, and that's why I'm running. I feel if I didn't run, I was doing myself a disservice and the town. I believe I have a foot in the town with people, and I'm respected, and I think I can bring that to the table, even though I don't have experience on any other board. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Mike,
Excuse me.
job-wise, experience-wise, anything on the financial background or accounting or finance?
Yep, financial background. I worked for John Hancock and Long-Term Care Partners, both located over in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And I was a certified long-term care consultant, working with people ages from 50 all the way up to 90, working on their long-term care, making sure that their budget was, fit for the type of policy that they had going forward, trying to get into nursing homes, long-term care facilities, or having aid come into their house. So trying to set up their budget that way they didn't cut their legs off from underneath them.
Okay.
So, welcome.
Any other questions? Before Dana goes again, just want to see if anybody else wants to go? Okay, Dana, go ahead.
Mike, you just stated you worked for Long-Term Care Partners.
Yep.
Okay, I also worked for them too.
Okay.
As a senior rep.
Yep.
And I don't recall setting people up in nursing homes. That always went over to the nurses area.
Right. They had a open season, they called it, where we ramped up their long-term care program. And we had 24 employees over there. We worked under Nathan Siebert. He was the manager over there. And so what we did was we handled all their government officials with setting up their long-term care policies going forward and what the state offered them. And then what we did was we took our 24 employees and moved them over to John Hancock to ramp up their long-term care because they didn't have any to begin with at that office over in Portsmouth.
How long ago did you work for them? And how long?
And now it would have been 2 years ago.
And how long did you work for them?
For long-term care partners, it was 6 months. And once we got their situation all settled, we went over to John Hancock, and I was there for about 2 years.
Okay.
Any other questions? Or anything else you want to offer?
No, I think I've stated it pretty clear in my application, my resume, so to speak. So I hope for the best, and I'll leave it up to your discretion. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Mike.
Roseanne, do you want to do the same?
Hi, Roseanne Cox, 332 Water Falls Road. I feel like I'm at another council meeting. I served on the Budget Committee as an elected official and also as a council rep to the Budget Committee. I've served on ZBA, Conservation Commission, as a town councilor, an alternate in the Planning Board, and a Planning Board member. And Heritage as well. And I don't know if I'm leaving one or two out. But I've been involved in one board or another in town for the last, I think, 15 years. And it's something I enjoy, and I feel I have a lot to offer, and I'd like to continue.
Questions for Roseanne?
I suppose some of us have a advantage in that you were here last year, so we do know.
Okay, thank you, Roseanne.
Thanks.
Okay, any discussion or? Drew?
Sure. First of all, I'd like to thank both Roseanne and Michael for volunteering. Me personally, that's an area that I want to see people continue to do. I think it's important that we as citizens do participate and encourage others to participate. That's all part of a democracy. With that in mind, I'm going to say that me personally, I'm going to vote for Michael Lang because he has run for office. He's shown an interest. I want to encourage that interest. And I'm confident that Roseanne, you will remain involved in one way or another. So I think it's a way for both to be involved, as far as I'm concerned. So that's the way I'm intending to vote.
Any other? Dana?
That was a good point, Drew. However, I would like to, because of the fiscal responsibilities that this board has and the budget, the way they are, both the town and the school side, and where we've been working collaboratively with our budget committee, I kind of like to see the continuity stay there. There are other committees that could, Mike could do other committees, Roseanne could do also, but on the line of continuity, somebody who knows what is currently happening and where we are fiscally right now, my vote's going to go with Roseanne, only for that reason. It's not because Mike can't learn it or anything, but we're at a point right now, we need to continue with the people who have that knowledge base until we get through a lot of these crises that we are currently having.
If you were to solely base it on experience alone, obviously Roseanne has it. She has more experience on the budget committee than I do, and I just got elected in. I look at it as more of a fresh look. That's the main reason why I decided to run for budget committee, was to be another eye on what's going on and actually see and not stand on the outside and complain at my TV and yell at it, and actually get involved. And that's where I commend Michael for standing up there. Lack of experience and putting himself out there as a community member and wanting to join a committee and be a progress of the future for the community and show some initiative. For a kid of his age, I call him a kid, I've known him since he was a baby. For a kid of his age to get up there and to run for one office and get voted down and then say, you know what, I'm going to continue to fight and try and be a member of this community on a board or a committee is commendable. And it's all due with respect with Roseanne. I mean, like I said, you have more experience than I do, but my vote's going to be for Michael just for a fresh look. I want to see some new eyes on the paper to try and give us some different views. He's youth of the community. He's going to come at it from that angle. And if we don't allow the youth to try and run and try and be a part of the community on boards, why would they even want to come and try and run for a board or a committee? So that's where I stand. My vote's going to be for Michael.
Me personally, I want to commend Michael just because, there's a lot of people that don't run for office in this town. We hear a lot of people talk, and he's the youngest I've seen run in the 15 some odd years I've been here. So I want to commend you for that. But, where I'm deciding it, I'm still kind of on the fence. But I definitely like the new perspective and the youth, but I also know Roseanne's got a lot of experience. So, you can go either one. But either way, Mike, I got to commend you.
And I want to, sorry. I want to take time also then to commend both of you and to commend Roseanne for coming up and applying. I know that it was a tough election year. I know that you did run. I don't think that the votes that came in were, I think they were very respectable. And I think you should feel proud of that. I think there were several hundred people that did stand behind you, and I'd like to say thank you. Larry?
Again, I'd like to thank both of you for signing up. We haven't taken the vote yet, and I don't know how the vote's going to go. I do know as a young person, ran for the Budget Committee first time, and I lost. And I wasn't deterred by that. So if it happens to be you, Michael, don't give up. If it's what you want, go for it.
I'd like to underscore some of the comments made prior, that democracy works best when you have everyone well represented. And I think Michael represents, as I think Drew commented on, both Drew and Blue, another constituency maybe that's being represented, a younger part of Newmarket, and I think that would be a great addition. So I'm in support of Michael, but also thank you, Roseanne. As always, you've added a lot to our community.
Any other? Yeah, I would just concur, just thank you both for applying. It's sort of a unique situation where we have a vacancy and it wasn't based on an election per se, so really appreciate you both. You both bring, obviously, some different perspectives and different experiences, so however the vote goes, it won't be an easy one, I think, because of that. So I do respect both of you for your applications. Blue.
In the last meeting, Larry actually hit a point, and I just wanted to say real quick, we need more people to run for committees, boards, so please, everybody who has any interest, go out and put your name on a ballot or sign up for a meeting. I see the board out front on the town hall has a lot of vacancies across the boards and committees. So please, we need more community members to step up and help us out.
Make a motion
Yeah,
to...
somebody should probably make a motion to,
Make a motion to
Vote?
vote?
I'll second that.
Okay, I'll make a motion to call the vote.
okay. We have a vote to call the vote?
If
Okay.
that's the appropriate.
And I second it, or you want to second it, Amy?
Okay. Sure. Okay. Let's, we'll go youngest first. All those in favor of,
That would be Rosie.
sorry, that's what they said, he was very young, so I'm not making it, somebody else said
Well, you
that.
could have gone with the most experienced.
We'll go with, for all those who would like to have Michael Lang join the Budget Committee, please raise your hands. Four. I'm going to raise my hand. Okay. All those who would like to have Roseanne appointed to the Budget Committee? 4. 5-4. So, Michael, you will be, I think you go to the town hall and get sworn in. And Roseanne, again, thank you very much, and we know you'll stay involved. And please come to our meetings and share your ideas with us. So, okay, thank you. Our next, we're going to talk about it later, but if you happen to leave, our next meeting is probably going to be May 20th.
Okay.
And you're both welcome to that. Okay, so at the last meeting, I think, Larry, you were the one who brought up meeting attendance, sort of meeting attendance protocol, and I just thought we should spend a couple minutes on that. And I looked up on page 49 of the budget law book, which either have, some of you have with you or have it someplace probably, or if you need one, let me know and we'll get some more. If you look on page 49, if you have it, under D, membership, the last sentence, actually. Members who miss 4 consecutive scheduled or announced meetings of which they received reasonable notice, unless the chair has excused them, are automatically removed from the committee. So it's pretty clear statement, I think, for the Budget Committee protocol. So I'll read that again. Members who miss 4 consecutive scheduled or announced meetings of which they received reasonable notice, unless the chair has excused them, are automatically removed from the committee. Now, what that doesn't really talk about is what if you miss a lot in the course of a year. And I don't know if folks from the council, you probably have, you were on it before, I know, but if there's other school board, or if you have any, because we were trying to be consistent in terms of that, but we may need to.
Well, we're regulated by state RSA on that. Well, regardless to what other boards might have, it applies to them on the RSA side of their equation.
Well, this one doesn't talk about, though, what happens if the person, if you miss like every other one, if you miss like half of the meetings in a given year, is there some protocol?
Well, I think it's clear, 4 consecutive.
Right, but if the person makes, you could make like 3 or 4 meetings out of the course of the year, out of like 12, and not fall into this. So do we want to pursue this further, or is this a good enough guidance for now for us?
I think it's fine.
I just have a question. How are we going to monitor it for 4 times? I mean, is this the 3rd time, the 2nd time, the 4th time, or who's keeping tally? Would that be you?
Yeah, I know.
And the chair.
Do you have
And I think I sent you an email about that. My assumption was that people were excused if they didn't come up because nobody said otherwise, so it would be helpful when you say they're excused.
At the very beginning of the meeting, we will state that, right? And I did that after, I remember that, and then I mentioned that Judy was excused, but everybody else was
And
present,
that's-
so.
We'll keep a running,
Right.
Yeah, it'll be in the minutes.
okay.
And that's a good point, because in the past, it was not stated when people were not here. And you were right. And Ellen, you're doing a good job.
Thank you. So I think we can go along, and if we have a situation that comes up and we're confused and it doesn't quite fall into that, we can deal with that at that point, but, great.
One other point.
Okay.
Mike's position is only for 1 year.
That's correct. It's a 1 year, and then,
Right.
yep,
And
it'll be,
then it opens up for the.
right, and then you'll, re-election for the,
Just, I knew you knew that, but for public purposes.
Right,
Right.
exactly.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, the next item is something I put on the agenda, something I've been toying with, and I think some of us have talked a little bit about it, but this idea of having a budget forum, sort of a community forum. And the idea would be partly for our own information, education, but really to engage the public to participate in such a forum, and they could be like probably downstairs in the auditorium, and they could come. And what I was thinking about, and these are just my brainstorming ideas, so I look to you for your ideas, whether you think it's a good idea, 1, and 2, what form it might take, if you think it's a good idea. But you may know that a number of people, including the Efficiency Committee, have been thinking about how do we bring the town budget issues and the school budget issues together, you know, so we can look at the entire community. And also to look at, you know, sort of what's been the 10-year trend in terms of budget, you know, expenses and revenues, both in terms of operating and capital on the school side and the town side, and then look forward 5 years. And the town and the school both have been doing forecasting, a little bit of forecasting now for 5 years. So the idea of the forum would be to invite the school and the town to come, present that information. And then I talked briefly to Steve Fournier about this, because I know the town and the school work a bit together on this. I know, like in the deliberative session, where the town could present, the school could present, and then the town, or maybe Steve or one of his people, could then put it together, and so sort of combine it into overall 10-year trend and 5-year forecast, so we can see what, you know, the impacts are on expenses, revenues, tax impacts, tax analysis, that sort of thing. Because I think that's one of the things people are sort of looking for in terms of where, you know, where are we going, and it helps us think about, you know, what kind of capital projects might we have in the next 5 years? What sort of operating budgets are we looking at? What's been happening and where is that going? We could also have someone from the local government center come. We've been trying to get someone to Newmarket to talk about, you know, because Newmarket's slightly unique in terms of our town council and our sort of with our charter and all that. I know the Charter Commission is working on their stuff, so it seems like an appropriate time to try and do this. And so I had talked to Steve Fournier, and he thought August might be a good time because summer is just sort of out for people in terms of getting people together, but that might be a good time to hold such a thing. And maybe it would be an evening for a couple hours, or a Saturday for 2 or 3 hours. So I'm opening up for discussion and feedback. Dana?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and I think the town, Steve, is receptive to that, but I thought I saw an email, correct me if I'm wrong, from the school side saying that they cannot do that, and nor is he planning on doing it.
Doing what?
Doing some type of forecasting for the next 5 years to show what some of the expenditures would be. And on the same side of that, Ellen, the concept that you're talking about is an excellent concept. However, within the charter, I think the charter already states that the council and the administrator must bring all committees and departments together on an annual meeting And that is something I initiated when I was chairman of the council, because it was in the charter, but it was never being followed. So I don't know if that's on the same line as what you're saying. Because everybody would get, all the different chairmen would get together downstairs in the auditorium and would explain to what it is they're doing on their committees currently and what they're planning on doing in the future.
I don't know if it's so much that. I think what I see when you're talking about the budget forum is I think what we're really trying to do, we need to do better in this town is, you can use the word transparency, whatever you want to use. I think the more information that we can get out to the public, the better, regardless of what the situations are. And I think, with the school, with the 5-year, I mean, what I've read a lot of it too is there's so many variables right now, whether it's the tuitioning, whether it's all these different things. So a 5-year forecast right now, it's like throwing there's too many numbers out there that, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, that there's too much going on right now until we get that final information. But regardless of that, the more that we can help educate and get the numbers out there so that everybody knows kind of what's on the plate for town, school, everything, the better off we can be as instead of, the less information that's out there, and I've been guilty of this in the past few years, is you start to fill it in with your own information until you actually start getting in. And that was part of why I want to get on here, so I could start to really see the numbers for the school and for the town and all that, so I could have a better understanding of what was really going on. And I think the more we can do that with the public, the better it will be for all the situations. I think that's where right now, that's what a lot of people are asking for.
I think that's currently what we're doing.
No, I'm not saying we're not, but I'm saying I think that's the goal. So if there's a forum, with social media, with Facebook and all this stuff out there, I really do think that we're still not reaching everybody. How do we reach everybody? And that's the big question. So I've heard Steve, Fournier ask, what can we do to help get that information? So if it's a forum, absolutely, whatever we can do to help.
But you'd always lead the horse to the water, but you've got to get the people to come. And if you can't
Amen.
do that, that's really not our issue. We're doing everything we can. And I absolutely agree with you. Absolutely agree. But how do you do that? Look at Mike's
So,
doing it
Danny,
one.
can you hold, because we're trying to talk about whether we want to do the forum and not. Let's try and look forward and see if we can do this, not
I think we
hold the
should.
barriers yet. Let's look at the opportunities first.
I'm not holding
Thanks.
barriers.
If I can speak to a couple of the things. The whole communication piece of, putting information out there and having the community receive it it's always been a tricky one, and every board and council has to be aggressive in pushing that forward. Communication isn't yelling from the highest hill, it's making sure that people hear it, and every group needs to stay vigilant on making sure the message is getting out there. Getting back, Dana, to your first point regarding the forecasting, I'm not sure where you came to the impression that the school district was unwilling to build a forecast. There was a presentation at a board meeting by the superintendent and business administrator probably 2 months ago now that went over an operating budget forecast. It had some weaknesses in it, and they're going back and revising that. Right. But Dave, you're very right. There's a lot of things that we're working on right now that are so large in scope that makes the forecasting of the operating budget not what's going to swing the tax rate significantly, if you will. If we choose to tuition our students to Oyster River, we still have a decision we need to make about how we provide education to our middle school kids, and that perhaps includes 5th grade into the current building with some sort of renovation or something new. There's a lot of variables that we're trying to narrow down now. So I'm sorry you had that impression that there was an unwillingness to build a forecast. That is happening, and it's ongoing and being revised, and I expect that the school board will have another presentation sometime in the next several months with more revision there. But know that the big pieces are the cost of tuition and how that compares to educating our students within Newmarket, which way the community chooses. As I recall, there's been a few iterations of how town council committees report to the council. I know there's been kind of meetings downstairs, and I think more recent councils have had committee chairs report to the town council. Drew, I believe you maybe recently spoke to the, as a conservation committee rep to the council.
A year ago.
A year ago now.
I haven't done it in 2013 yet.
So that is kind of happening, maybe in a different format. And lastly, I'm all in favor of any opportunity that we can get the community together to talk as a group about, the tax bill. There's numbers broken out on the tax bill, but it comes from one wallet or one family or individual. So it's important that we look at everything as a whole and not if there's things that need to be bonded. We don't want to do a lot of that in 1 year. We wanted to plan not the town in isolation and the school district in isolation, but build a community master plan of how we're going to pay for all the our expenses.
Ellen, just point of clarification if I could. Drew, I don't think I said that they were unwilling. The email that I saw said that he wasn't able to do that because all the floating variables. So it's not a question that he wasn't willing to do it. He wasn't able to do it because of those variables floating.
Okay, perhaps I misheard you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I just don't want somebody to think
Russ?
that.
Well, I'm always interested in seeing if we can educate the public. It's been a little disappointing when you think about the deliberative sessions that we've ended up having 75 at one and about 170 at the other, which I don't even want to think about what percentage it is, but I'm sure it's way less than 3. And the interesting thing to me about what would this forum do differently, okay, than we have done before, since we haven't exactly attracted a standing room only audience. And I think, when I think of the town, I think the town has certain issues. I think most of those are at least beginning to be dealt with, so they may be being clarified as far as water and sewer and things and what that project cost is. But I think the school side, I would be frightened to make one forecast for the school based on all the variables that are undecided and the major significant swings from building to tuitioning and what happens and buyouts and all these kind of things with major changes in portions of the system. But I do think it would be valuable to the community and valuable perhaps to think of different multiple forecasts for the school as an educational tool that would say, if we did this approach, building a school, keeping, Newmarket completely separate as a school system, what would that look like? That may be variable as well as plans come in for the school, but at least sets a track that says, here are the 8 things that would be in place, and we could quibble about how much each one of those 8 things cost, but it would bring you to a conclusion. Now, here's plan 2, here's plan 3, and here's what the dynamics of the changes in operating costs or capital contributions or paying off loans would be. So people can get a sense of what those mechanics are and what the significance is of those changes. Certainly questions I'm going to be asking more this year as we get closer to making certain decisions. So I would just throw that out as one. I'd hate to see one forecast for the school. One, because I wouldn't believe it, because nobody knows exactly what's going to happen, and how do you take those 3 or 4 radically different things and try to come up with one number that's balanced. I would rather see, here are the 3 general approaches, here are the dynamics of those, the key building blocks of those, and here are the assumptions that we're using. That would be helpful, and I think it would also help to educate the community. And to the extent that the town has that significant a difference in how it views itself, maybe it will after the Charter Commission and all that stuff happens, but at this point, I don't see any major radical ways of doing things differently unless we merge services with other towns or things. So I just look at that as having a couple of forecasts.
Just to follow that on that, Russ, the superintendent is working in earnest to understand the operating costs of business as usual, if you will.
Right.
The tuition, whole solution, the middle school piece. I think the whole board and the school administration realizes that to some people, the the school issue is an emotional issue purely, and some people think of it purely as a financial issue. We need to understand what it looks like over the long term financially to whichever of the solutions it is. So we need to run all those numbers so that we can understand those things entirely and know that there's a large blend of pros and cons and a lot of people perhaps in the middle between that financial and
And opinions aside, I only bring it, I think it's a tool to get a discussion going, where people can be emotional about an issue and have their opinions about a hypothetical. But I think the school can lead by saying, we, regardless of our opinion, know the building blocks and the pieces that go into each one of these solutions better than anybody. That's our job, to educate ourselves and you on that. And then through that saying, here are the variables in this plan and this is the impact and so on down the line, would be something that would create a dialogue and a better understanding of what, forget the emotional side, just what the building blocks and the pieces are.
Blue?
Getting back to the actual budget for part of it, there's two different sides. One is getting the information out to the public, but also getting information from the public. What do they want? To me, when I saw that on the agenda, it brought up two line items that I was thinking of instantly. One, how much does the public want to save? I mean, the original part of trying to figure out tuitioning out, and we're kind of beating up on the school here a little bit, of tuitioning out our students was to save money, was to lower our tax bracket. Is it worth it? Does the community think it's worth it to us to save 25 cents on the dollar, 50 cents on the dollar, $100 on the dollar, whatever, however it may be, in the long term? Because for me personally, if it's a wash and it costs just as much to build a school and just as much to tuition out and revamp a school, I would personally, and this is my own opinion, build a new school, because I wouldn't want to uproot an entire population of student body and move them away and have the Newmarket Mules and middle school go to Oyster River Bobcats. Sorry, I was raised in the town, so it's going to be that way. The second part is I also want to give some information out to the public as what the impact on the town is going to be. And I think that's very important for the school and the town to work together, come up with some kind of analysis of showing what the impact of a school leaving its district is. It's our largest employer. We're not getting rid of all the teachers. So that means people are going to leave. That means they may move. That means they're not going to spend money in the town. Some may decide to stay here, have jobs otherwhere, but picking up the pizza on Friday night might be in Durham if they work in Durham and not at downtown Newmarket. So there are some impacts there that I'd like to see that we can present to the town from a collaboration of both working together and coming up with some kind of analysis, which is tough because I don't know that many districts that have actually just closed the school. They've always distributed students to another part. Manchester has done it. They closed the school, but the students went somewhere else. So those were the two things when I thought a budget forum is a great idea. It's getting information out there, but also getting feedback from the public of what the public wants. What do they want is, I guess, is the ultimate answer.
Yeah, I think that was a big part of my thing, was so people could come and participate in the conversation.
Correct.
It would be a community conversation, not us up here talking, or not
Right.
even just the school or the administrators up talking, but some presentation and then lots of opportunity for conversation, because my thought was we just need lots more creative ideas. I mean, we've got, the town doing their thing and the school, you folks are doing stuff, but maybe there's a blending. Maybe there's a blending of an idea that it's like, wow, that's a really great idea. Now, by August, maybe some decisions will have been made, and that's great, but the point is, at some time in the year, maybe every year, it would be helpful to have a budget forum where people can come to town and us get together and talk about what do we want in the next year. I will share that one of Steve Fournier's sort of, I guess, tasks back to us is, what do we want for a budget? I talked to him about, we sort of have to, we get all this information and then we have to decide at the last meeting, December or January, this is the budget we propose based on what the two budgets that have come forward from the school and the town. And it seems always a little rushed and we have to sort of make this big decision. and can't we make, some decisions sooner? He says, well, not really, because it's the town council and the school board that create the two budgets that we respond to. However, we can think about the big picture of, do we want to see a flat budget? Do we want to see a 1% increase in the budget, a 2% increase in the budget? And is that for the town? Is that for the school? Is that for the two combined? I mean, that's the kind of role we can play, and the only way, it seems to me, where we can do that early in the process is to bring people in and have a conversation about it and say, okay, you want a flat budget, then we're going to have to cut some of these things, or this is what's happening with pensions and school operating budget, and if we don't want that, then this is probably what is going to look like on the budget, and some cuts, and then this is what the tax impact will be. So that we can have it's not a public hearing, it's not a school board meeting, and it's not a council meeting, it's an educational forum. So it should be hopefully less threat, it's more of a conversation, just
So are you
sharing
saying
information.
have the public tell the budget committee what they're looking for?
It's a
flat-
conversation. We're sharing information. We're hosting it, let's say, but it's an opportunity for people to provide a comment, have conversation, and maybe it's. I mean, this is in terms of the format. I think it's completely open in terms of how we want to approach this. Maybe there's, we have conversation, and then you can do dots. I mean, who knows? We could do whatever we want in terms of gathering information. That's our role, is to gather information and help make an informed decision about a budget. Amy.
Couple of things. I will refer to the recently appointed Michael Lang's resume here, where he says he's running for the Budget Committee because he believes that the budget process needs to be fair and balanced for both sides of our community. I agree with you. I might change it to all sides. I think that, for me, a budget forum would be something that would bring in LGC, because it's very educational as far as learning what the role of the Budget Committee is. We are not the Efficiencies Committee. We are not the pro-new school. We are not our own agendas. We are fiscally the one place where both budgets come together. It's pretty objective. I'm all for new ideas and whatever. I think there's a lot of committees out there that have tried to get together, and ultimately the chair of the school board and the chair of the town council come together as two companies, if you will, sharing the same building. But I don't really feel that it's the budget committee's role to sit there and be, for instance, the efficiencies committee. We are tasked with a specific job to do, as outlined in the budget law books. For me, it's nice getting involved early on in the process so that we're not just handed a budget saying, well, you've got this one or you've got the default. Otherwise, why are we all here? Why do we go through this exercise? So I think that the LGC education, whether or not we can do it as part of this budget forum, or whether there's independent courses, as several of us took last year, I think those are invaluable for all members. Cliff, obviously, you're on school board rep to budget, so you're going to have a specific focus that you bring, as is Larry on the school side, but the rest of us, I feel, are here as more of a fiscal responsibility thing, as Mr. Lang said. We have to balance all sides of it. We need forecasts in order to be able to go through. We know that there was an outcry when the tax rate spiked and all the associated other issues that went along with that. And I think we have a responsibility to keep it in front of people's faces that, based on the last elections, our tax rate are creeping right back up again. We do need to hear from people as far as what they want. People may decide that, yep, they want to spend more, but now it's specifically, okay, we decided this rather than we just got hit with it. Maybe it's a control issue, I don't know. But I hesitate to turn the budget forum, I would hesitate to turn the budget forum into something that is perhaps as specific as Mr. Foster brings out, just because there are other people doing things like that. I think we have to look at how do we divvy up the financial pie. That's the job that the Budget Committee is tasked with. And I think it helps everybody to remember not only that, but there is a difference between disagreeing and disliking someone, and so you can agree to disagree and still get along just fine. I think we've done well with that the last year. But I think hearing the forecasts of what's going on so that we understand, well, if there's $1 to be divvied up, and right now it's 50-50, and one side, to use the terminology that I really dislike, drops to 40 cents, it doesn't mean there's 60 cents open for somebody else to grab and it stays at $1. I think we have a real strong responsibility to the community to be fiscally responsible, however that is. And sometimes that means the tax rate goes up. I'm not necessarily against that. But I'd like to really nail the budget forum down a little bit and keep it as objective as possible. We are the one place where the two budgets and the money comes together. And I think our personal feelings, in a lot of cases, really, really have to take a back seat.
Russ and then Dana?
Yeah, well, Amy mentioned the LGC, and I don't know if you've had any discussions with them, Ellen. I don't know if this has been done in other communities. They've proven a useful resource to at least put your arms around situations and give you things to think about. So I don't know if we're going to make any decisions tonight on this, but it may be worthwhile between now and the next meeting or two to ask them, has this been done in other places, or do they have some thoughts that this type of forum may want to include these 5, 10, or 8 things, so we have a discussion of specific points to take a look at, and then I think we can form it. I certainly agree with Amy. I think we can all get carried away on what our own feelings are and emotional things. I think the specific focus of this committee is to be able to surface the numbers that are as correct as possible and to be able to understand those in an interactive dialogue with those people presenting the budget and then come to some conclusions. Things that we're not responsible, and I understand your point, there may be a deli owner who suffers as a result of kids moving, but that's not a point maybe to be interested to be taken, but it's not one we have any impact on or going to go start interviewing, each business, and we have no role there. So I would just say it will go where it'll go. If LGC has some form to it, I think that's great. And I tend to agree with Amy. We need to stay focused on what our job is, and then what other things come up during that process as good points I think are useful. But I think getting forecasting of various options and using that to educate ourselves and people, so we're just not talking about one number, we're talking about what happens with that, I think is a useful thing.
Dana?
Yeah, basically, I agree with both of you, bottom line on that one. However, I have been an advocate since I've been on this budget committee, and it's been 4 years now, that we meet on a monthly basis. Not just meet starting in October when the budget is given to us. I always wanted to meet prior to. Ellen was very great by saying, we're going to meet on a monthly basis so that we get reports like this.
Mm-hmm.
So we go through those reports and we see expenditures 175% over budget. We can then call in the administrator and say, can you explain why we're such over budget? What I haven't seen, and maybe Cliff can address this, that we never see one of these from the school side. And we repeatedly ask for it on the budget side, and we're not getting it. So I say this whole budget forum is a good idea. I don't know what LGC is going to contribute to that, and I say that only, again, my years being on the budget committee. In the past has always been, go to our workshops, and our workshops will tell you how a budget works and what your responsibilities are as a budget committee member. Then they follow that up with a book, which is published once a year, very similar to the book you have here. And that is provided to all budget committee people throughout the state of New Hampshire. So Again, I'm not really sure what the budget forum is really going to do, other than have us, work very hard to get this information to the public. But if we're not seeing the public's interest coming back, I really do feel sometimes that we're just pounding our head against the wall. Now, that doesn't mean that we should give up. No. We should continue, perhaps find other ways of communicating to the people. But I just in closing is that the budget forum, the concept, I like that, but I think it needs to be more structured. I don't know what LGC is going to offer on that side. I don't know whether they'll even come to that. Maybe they will. But I think our responsibility is to watch the budget, not watch the budget when it gets to us as a proposed budget in October. But on a monthly basis, look at that and then start asking questions to why these expenditures are there. And again, if we're going to do some type of forecasting, that is in the realm of the responsibility, I believe, of the Budget Committee, to look at that and look at the forecasting of what's coming down the road and how it might impact the taxes.
Amy?
I believe that on May 20th, the school will be, Christine will be here, so we will have some more information then. We can ask those specific questions. I know that monthly forecasts have been requested, but I also know that timing-wise, some things have been going on, so I'd say let's hold on. We will have more information on May 20th, and I believe that Christine will be here, and
That's a question. Are we asking that we haven't seen a year-to-date from the school for
Yes.
this year?
we are.
We'll talk about that a little bit down on the agenda, what we might want to
Yep.
question the school.
Yeah,
And
that's fine.
I have
Okay.
some thoughts about these expense reports, but we'll get to those in the next item.
I
Any
think
more thoughts on the budget forum?
I guess, if I may, regarding monitoring the budget on a monthly basis, I mean, yes, it's the budget committee, but I need to review that book and what our
Actually,
what
we're
our
gonna-
charge
We're going
is.
to talk about that a little bit more in the next item, so just hold
more
that
for
thought.
familiarity.
Yeah, let's hold that thought, because I have some thoughts on that as well.
Right.
And the next, where I've listed all this information, I just sort of gave out to you all, there's a purpose to that, and I'd like to chat when we get to that point in a second, if you could hold that thought.
Okay.
Any more in the budget forum? It sounds like, if I can summarize it, people, Larry, do you want to comment on the budget forum?
I'm all for
Okay.
the forum.
It sounds like the consensus was that the forecasting was really valuable, and having the town and the school come together, that would be somewhat unique in terms of the two coming together and presenting that at one forum. And then hopefully we can get LGC and we can contact them. I know Steve Fournier is he's very involved with the local government center, so there may be an opportunity for us to get
Well, and
somebody
if we
to come.
host a workshop, I mean, I think
Right,
I'd
other
like
people
to
could
see
come.
that is rather than going out of town, would they host a workshop
Right.
here? Could we do that?
Tie it into
Because
it.
educationally, for the budget law and going over that, and maybe tie it in somehow, again, to keep it very structured.
If I may, a couple of things quickly. An analogy to, well, the LGC piece is the New Hampshire School Board Association, and they hold classes for school board members, et cetera. And we've had great success with having those folks come and do a training for school board members rather than having folks go to Concord for that. So
Right.
I would expect that we'd be able to arrange something similar.
Maybe we could get them to the same meeting at the same time, possibly, if that's
Well,
possible.
no, he was saying that they
Separate
do that,
train.
so
As an
LGC would
analogy.
come as
Yeah.
an,
I
right.
know.
Is there a cost with that?
So,
As school board association members, I believe not, but
no, and it's the same with LGC, so I think what you're saying, yes, there was a LGC workshop that Ellen and I attended that was in Plastow, so towns can host, and they will go to individual towns based on what the projected attendance
Right,
is. and-
it's a question on attendance,
And they
whether you
invite
have
other
a
towns.
sufficient
Yes,
core to
and
have
they
it
invite other
locally,
towns.
or whether there would be 2 or 3
Right.
towns that may send.
If we wish, yeah.
and just a long-term observation, and my concern is that we need to have a compelling reason to get the community in the room. You know, when we have elections where there's nothing very contentious, the turnout's poor. When we have, even national elections, when there's a presidential election that's highly contested, everybody shows up. Or if, we've got something big as a warrant article in town, everybody shows up. But if we don't have anything really juicy, people stay home. So we really need to sell it.
But I'm not even sure that's true. I think the
that's-
swing is between 15 and 22%. I don't
Yeah,
think we've ever
it's-
gotten above that.
Right. Well, and I
Yeah,
think,
point well taken, yeah.
Cliff hit right on the head what I was thinking, but I couldn't say it. You gotta have something tangible to get them to come.
Well, there's no doubt we have to market the
Mhm.
concept, so that's sort of, I think, a given in terms of getting people there.
I think we're all for it.
Great. All right, well, I'll be back in touch, and maybe you and I can chat about where we want to go with it from here. So thank you for that conversation. Okay, so budget-related documents. So most of these documents you got via email, I'll mention each one so the public knows what we got and why. And a lot of this I thought would be useful was these documents were prepared either by the town or by the school, documents that they produce as part of their normal work that they do in terms of these documents. And I thought they'd be useful for the Budget Committee really as points of information. So that you might refer to them as we go through the budget cycle. It's not something we're going to go through and discuss each of these tonight because we don't really have a role in most of these documents, but I think they're useful in terms of, and we'll talk a little bit about each one just so we know what we have. And let's start with the town March expense report that Steve Fournier sent out, as he does. He sends it out to the entire Budget Committee each month. Excuse me, I have a cold, so he sends it out to the council, receives it, and he sends it to us as a reference. Thanks, Michael. We'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Now, this is the existing fiscal year. So we don't really have a role in this current budget. This is the existing fiscal budget. It was already passed. This is provided for our information and sort of to look at and say, just to touch base, how's everything going? Any concerns? It's not for detailed analysis because we ran into this problem last year, if you remember. We got all excited, and myself included, I will admit, to seeing these numbers and like, oh my gosh, you guys are way over budget. And that really wasn't the case. It's just part of the normal budget process and the way it goes in terms of the cycle of expenditures. So I think we have to be very careful about zeroing in too much on these monthly expense reports. They're provided as a guide. So we start thinking about next year, this is, or the year after, right, the year after, in terms of, because we've already approved the budget for this coming year. So this is a long, again, just sort of looking at the trends, how are things going. Steve can come in if he sees something that's really out of whack and tell us, geez, I'm kind of worried about this. I talked to him about this report. He doesn't see nothing outstanding that looks out of not normal. And I think Larry could also provide, because obviously they go through it more routinely in terms of expenditures in the current budget. And I guess you can comment, Larry, as well, in terms of your thought. But I think we have to be careful of expecting, too much discussion here on these monthly expense reports because we don't really have a role. And we can talk about what we'd like to see from the school, but let's stay focused on the town report for a second. And I just want, if people want to comment on that.
I have a comment.
Larry, do you want to comment first in
I
terms of the
just
council?
want to reiterate what you mentioned earlier. Don't look too deeply into the percentages because it is all timing as to when the bills are come due. So, and that changes the percentage. A large bill is going to throw the percentage off, or if you haven't paid one yet, you're under budgeted at the point. So you hit it right on the head, I think.
Russ, and then Dana, did you have?
Yeah,
Okay, go ahead.
I think it's look, we haven't had numbers that have added up for the past several years. So let's go back in history, okay? We didn't have a balance sheet that actually balanced. We had 3 of them with 3 different numbers, but we didn't have a balance sheet that balanced until late last year for the first time. Okay, so regardless of what many of us have asked for with numbers, if we had numbers before, which we never got, they wouldn't have been right and they would have been misleading. Hopefully, we've spent the last year or two with some additional accounting help in getting the record straightened out. I'd still like that to get totally validated. But I think what Steve has done, and it's refreshing, and I'm hoping the school board will do it the same, is giving a performance report, whether it's monthly or quarterly, that creates a dialogue. It allows people to see numbers. The dialogue that's created could be very easy. Gee, we've spent 100% of this budget or the capital because that's a one-time contribution during the year. We don't have to speak about that line item. And I'd like to get that dialogue going as well, because it helps, as you said, Cliff, educate the community. They see that dialogue going on. There should be nothing that's hidden through these things. And through that dialogue, we learn as a budget committee on how to treat these items as to whether they're significant or not. So I think it provides us with a great place to be able to touch base and have a dialogue with the senior people over each of the administrative areas.
So, just to follow up on that, you don't mean to have Steve come every month to talk with us about it?
No.
Yeah, okay.
And I
Just
don't
if something
think-
comes up, if you have something that you want to have asked, that's great.
Yeah, and I think he's been more than willing to share what he provides the town council to the budget committee. So if he's doing a variance report or an update, I think getting that information so we know it and can read it, and maybe once a quarter checking in. I don't think we're the hound dogs that are looking to tell people how to do things, but we are looking that we're touching base, thinking about the long-term implications, and not being asleep at the switch when we get a surprise budget, and have 3 months to understand everything. This creates a flow.
Right, that was
That was the whole purpose of trying to meet once a month, and I think I said even quarterly, I wouldn't care.
Well, we started to do that last year, Dana,
Yeah,
and
we
I
did.
think that's great, and we're doing it this year. Now we actually may have numbers to look at. It's frightening. But I'm hoping we can continue that trend.
So, no, sorry, you went something and then Dave.
Ellen, I hope you're not suggesting, looking at this report, I'm seeing legal at 122% above. Now, I feel that I should be able to go either to you or to Steve and ask for an explanation of that, because that is March's report. My concern is, if we're over at this point, where is that money coming from? It's going to come from the surplus that we have at the end of the year, which then means it's taking away to help reduce the tax base.
Right, which is the town council's role and responsibility, and that's what they're looking at.
That's correct, that's on their side, but on our side, we have the right to ask that question. He may
as a
say,
citizen.
huh?
You do as a citizen.
No, as a budget committee member, I've looked into this, we have a right to question. So when I say 122, Steve might say, we had a big bump because something really happened. That would satisfy. But for us, or a budget committee member, if we don't really ask the question when we see something really extreme, and this really is not an extreme, I'm just using this as an example. I've seen some places in here in January and February a couple of years back that it was around 174%, and that was illegal. And question it, why? Why is it that high? And here we are in February, and you still got March, April, May, June, 4 more months. And you're going to freeze legal because you're over the budget.
Let's try on that one,
So, I mean, that's what I'm saying. I want to have that flexibility to ask that question and not have Steve come in, but I can email you and CC, what's his name, Steve, and say, why is this so high? Gotta, help me out to figure this out. But we should always question.
Well, I was going to kind of go with Russ, because, with my business, we analyze our P&Ls every month for all my units, and, you have to know what are your thresholds of tolerance, like, what are the things that you can tolerate, what is the tolerance level you can handle, but really it comes down to quarterly, because there's so many variances, this winter versus last winter. Last year we had no snow, this year we've had all kinds, so there's going to be variances in things, and we have to understand that, but I think the educational piece of these, I dissected the first two and I'm looking at them going, what am I looking at? But then as I looked, I go, okay, what can we control as a town and what are things that are uncontrollable? And just don't go on a wild goose chase and try to find things, but what are the things that really make a difference that as a town we can, or a school or whatever you want to call it, as a community, we can be aware more of. But I think if we try to chase it monthly, I think we're going to drive ourselves completely crazy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we did that last year. We actually did.
Yeah.
And we realized it, I think, by the end of because it was before the fiscal year ended, and it wasn't even it was basically 2 budgets ago that we had been involved with, so it's, I think we have to be a little careful about getting
Getting in the
bogged down.
Yeah.
When we're supposed to be looking forward, we don't want to bog down in past decisions.
couldn't-
Not that they can't be used as guides, and I understand what you're saying, but think of it as a guide, not to grill
Right.
down. And why is that? That's the council's responsibility to dog, the monthly expenses, and they're approving the expenses and all that. So that's their role. If you see something that stands out, sure, email and ask, geez, this is really bothering me, why is that so high? I think that's a perfectly valid question. Cliff?
I think you just said most of what I wanted to say. A couple of points will remain if I can hang on to them long enough. One is, I think it's important that all our communications with the town council and the school board, or to the superintendent or the town administrator, go through the chair, so that we're not all distracting. We can distract ourselves pretty well, but we need to let those folks run their railroads, and the town council has their responsibility over the budget that's in play, as well as the school district. That was another point.
I have one then.
Amy?
I think it goes to what Dave was saying as far as when you're looking at the P&Ls and whatever. What I do with a lot of this is I look at the bottom line first. I know Russ does too.
Yep.
And on the town side, I look at the bottom line. We're a quarter of the year through, and I think we were at 72 or 73% bottom line. So I don't tend to get hung up on it. Maybe I just like shortcuts. Maybe I don't tend to get up on one over, because I think, to answer your point, you absolutely have a point. If something is way over, yeah, I want to know what it is. In the case of legal, I know what it is because I was at those town council meetings. So the information gets out there. It's who gets to see it. Is it all in one place? But I also know that when we're over on legal, if we look at the other items that are under, we can pretty much see where Steve's gonna, it's that bottom line. I don't want to get into, geez, you bought 3 boxes of Kleenex and 2 rolls of toilet paper instead of the other way
Yeah,
through.
and that's not the point.
No, that's right. And so I look at the bottom line, and that pretty much, with the way my day goes, kind of is where I stop a lot of the time. And then I'll skim through the rest of it to kind of go, okay, department by department, based on what my budget needs to be. Yes, I'm on track for budget, but based on my goals, I need to be cutting my expenses over here, or maybe we need to take on getting a new sign, or maybe now I gotta whittle through and see where I can glean it out of. I do exactly the same thing.
Yeah, and I think all
it
the-
tends
Russ
to
was next,
cut
and
through.
Yeah,
Over here.
I mean, look, I understand by having what I'll say is a more active budget committee. One of the reasons it's more active is it's actually getting numbers to look at, so it's not just talking about hypotheticals. And there should be nothing frightening about numbers. We're not, the budget committee, as I understand it, we're certainly not responsible for the day-to-day operations or making the management decisions on how that money is actually spent, okay? We are, however, the people who recommend a budget, which may be different than the school and the town. So we do have that responsibility to say to the town, regardless of what the school board or the town has recommended, here's our recommendations to vote on. And I also think it's a healthy dialogue to be able to have touch points during the year to think about the long-term implications of this, explaining why things are the way they are, and what steps you may be taking in the future to retard that growth or to stop the expense this year. I think it's a healthy dialogue. There shouldn't be any, it's none of your business type of stuff. For the budget committee during the year to say, well, I think you should snowplow 3 times a week, and you're crazy people, I don't think that's
Not
the
our
position of the
purview.
budget.
Not
committee.
our
That's right.
Okay?
That is
But
not
I
our
would
role.
like to know, for example, and these are just whether things talk to me differently, or I've been doing numbers for more years than I care to admit I've been alive. Things talk to me. And if somebody has spent the budget for all the repairs on the roads 75% of the year through, I'd like to be able to understand, does that mean all the projects are done? And so we're effectively on budget or only 5% over, but we're not going to be spending any money unless there's a disaster in the next quarter. Or, no, we're going to go over budget by $300,000. I sort of like to have the community know that and understand that as an explanation. and that's it. The issue about us managing or people are going to do what they're going to do, but the responsibility of this committee has no management responsibility. I think it has to get information out and has to get educated and has to present a knowledgeable budget based on that dialogue when the time comes.
I think that's,
you wanna
yes, thanks.
follow up?
I think that's well said. I see the value in meeting periodically through the year. The highest points from my perspective is to understand the budget structure, the language of it, how accounts are set up, because there's a lot of coding that happens. So if we can go into budget season with a group understanding of all that, that's terrific. And also an understanding of where maybe the pain is, like, for example, the school district has a lot of unanticipated special education expenses in this current year, and that's going to impact the next budget proposal. So if we can start talking about that now in broad themes, that's, I think, a good place to have it, so that it's not a October surprise.
Yeah. I suspect the school is more complex than the town side, just 'cause the way they all have to do their structure the budget. It's definitely more complicated.
Reporting
You can see
requirements, et
roads,
cetera.
buildings, it's, on this town side.
It doesn't have a slush fund, so it becomes a little
Yeah.
more
Yeah, they're also mandated by
nimble
federal.
during the year.
Dane, and then we're going to wrap up this particular conversation.
I want to go back to what Russ had said earlier, that the budget we've been working with for the past couple of years, the numbers have been floating all over the place. And I think a lot of that actually is related to the fact we have a new town administrator. We've had possibly 2 finance persons on the town side and 2 finance persons, new ones, on the school side. And I'm hoping this year that, I think we're starting to see it, the numbers are coming through. And now we just got to look at them and validate those numbers and, understand what those numbers are. So hopefully it's going to be better.
Okay, so to wrap this up, I think presumably Steve will continue to send us the monthly reports, so my suggestion, read it through. If you have some specific things that jump out at you, put them in an email to me, and I will collate those and can send them to Steve, and if it warrants, if there's enough, and it warrants him to come to the next meeting if he's available, or the meeting after, we will do that. But I also talked to Steve about if there are key points during the year where he think it would be really useful for him to come to the budget committee so that he's not at meetings all the time.
And this is also a belief pulpit for Steve or some of the council members or the school board members. They can come here and use the budget committee meeting as a way to get out information about what's happening in the town. I mean, this may be one of the few places where both pieces come together. So I think Steve, besides trying to be an open kimono and say, here are the numbers, let's dialogue about them, also looks at this as a place where he can provide information to whoever's listening out there about what's happening in the town. So it's a two-way street. I think we provide a useful forum to get that done.
I think
Great.
that's
Final
awesome.
thought.
Final
Final
thought.
smidgen.
Is very small. Know that the school district has been rolling out new finance software, and it hasn't been going as smoothly as anyone has liked. So, and maybe I'm
Been there.
providing a transition or jumping ahead.
Soon, we'll get to it soon, but not quite yet.
But I anticipate that we're going to be able to do a much better job starting momentarily, perhaps.
Sounded like May was going to be a good meeting time.
For
Would be-
providing similar regular reporting.
Yeah, it would be nice to get something before the 20th
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah, we'll talk about that shortly.
Yeah.
Not there yet. Okay, moving on. You will have received via email the new teacher contract, the new three-year contract, again, for your information. For those of you who were on the budget committee the last year or two, I think it was sometime in August, we got a fiscal analysis of the previous contract. And so it was usually a 1 year, and it showed they call them liabilities, I think, for the cumulative sick days, the pensions, the health care, the cumulative impact of the contract. And it showed the fiscal analysis in the school district. I don't know if you guys ever got that, but I don't know if something Brian requested, but we got it for the past 2 years, and I requested that again from Christine and Dr. Hayes, and she said it would be again in August or sometime when they can pull that information together. But it's a very useful information, and that would be something that, again, in the budget forum to share with people so they can see the 3 years of the contract, here's the fiscal impacts of that. And we would do the same with the police union contract. They haven't done that in the past, but maybe there's a way to look at that as well. That one is not yet available electronically. Not sure why, but.
Yeah, I did speak to Steve on that. He says they're actually, on the police side, they're calculating numbers.
Yeah, they're finalizing that contract to be able to share it with us, so. Is there any question about the teacher contract? That's really all I wanted to say about it, that it's there for your information. The same with the school and the town employee 2012 earnings. It's something that the school district and the town do every year, I believe. Calculate the previous fiscal year earnings, and so again, that's just a piece of information for you to have. Any questions on those? School insurance. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I had just one question, and maybe it's too specific, but people who've left the school system but are drawing pensions and all that, that's not in any of the current salary information because it's not salary, I'm assuming.
I've been debating bringing that point up now regarding those earnings numbers. I think there has been some confusion over some of the earnings. I don't know if there's a better word for it, that individuals have received. If there is a teacher, for example, who may be retiring, they can start taking some of their, I'm forgetting the language, but some of their retirement incentives as much as 2 years prior to time that they leave. So that'll appear in their earnings number, but so that would lead one to think that that is what their salary is year over year, but it's really not. It's an artifact just at the end of their.
Well, this is why I hope we can get into some dialogue to understand those. I mean, to the extent, and it's not picking on anything, it's just saying, from a salary perspective, when you use that word, or anybody uses that word, you lock into place. If you said salary plus bonus was a way to determine current income for the year. Benefits are benefits, and we should understand those as far as insurance premiums and medical premiums. But there's this other piece of the puzzle that says when a teacher or a town employee retires, there's pension cost. And now either that's borne by the state and it doesn't touch any of our P&Ls, or it comes out of our operating budgets, and that's one of the things I don't think we've, at least I've understood in the last year quite as much. So anything you can do to educate, because that's exactly the point. You may be forced to put a number down on a piece of paper that is not rational if you understand what was going on, okay? And it gets everybody crazed that somebody's making $3 million a year, whatever. Then we should be able to explain that in a way that makes everybody say, okay, now I understand. It's a good form.
George, and then Dave.
Yeah, I guess my only point is, I believe the values that we're given are earnings, which means it is the sum of all checks that were written to that individual.
Right.
It is not, I repeat, not salary. And that's true on both of those earnings sheets.
Yeah, and again, this is, I think, taking Russ's point completely, that, and one of the things we've tried to do is,
Yeah, absolutely.
We need an explanation.
when we get, can I just say one thing
Can I
about,
just sort of say to you that the school report says
I was just gonna say that,
salary
Russ.
in big letters right above the number? Thus is why I'm speaking.
one of the things that we,
And that is not well labeled. Sorry.
yeah, if I can just say, if it's helpful, and I'll just say this because it's helpful if you write that down. Because I know when we went through the budget book last year that we got from the school, there were a number of things like that. There were some titles and headings that were not clear, and I think it was a missed opportunity for the school side to clearly explain things. And I'm not sure, it was never, that's never redone, the budget book. So I'm not sure that information has been carried forward. So my recommendation is this, according to what Drew said, is mislabeled, and it would be more helpful to you, to the school district, if it was more properly explained. Because our purpose, my purpose in sharing this is to share it with the public. So everybody has the same information, and so we're all talking about the same stuff.
Oh,
And that only works as if we're given stuff that's clearly explained, and so I appreciate the comments.
And our fiduciary responsibility in being able to understand it, that's what we're being paid the big bucks
And
for.
I will ask Steve to somehow give that a label as well for that, maybe in the future for the town side. Dave, you had a comment.
Just one of the things that, I mean, we do this quarterly with my company too, but one of the things that is missing from this to me that I think is important is amount of time and position, because there are, with tenure and stuff like that, I mean, if there's somebody on here that's been a teacher for 40 years and someone that's been a teacher for 5, there's a big difference in that. Same thing with the town. I mean, that we have a scale that we use with our teams, and you know, with so many years that they have, so if their salary's high, well, if they've been with the company for 20 years, of course their salary's going to be higher than somebody that's starting in. So if we're going to get into this, we just have to be careful, because there's probably some more variables that we may need to totally understand this. That's all. Yeah, amen. That's all I'm saying.
Dana, Larry, and then Blue.
Okay, and now, with all of that being said, does that also apply to the scenario of, let's take an example, the police department? I can see across the top of one of the lines that one of the officers is making $78,000 a year. And yet, when we ask the question, why is that person making $78,000 a year? The answer comes back, well, he does side work such as a flagger and stuff like that.
That's right.
Would it not be appropriate to put down the base salary and what they get for overtime?
I think, well, Larry, you guys, Larry and then Blue.
I mean, I think we can get anything that we ask for. We asked for salaries, and they've given us salaries. If we want it broken down more, I'm sure that'll happen. The Epping Town Book, if you take a look at that, it has many more categories other than salary, so totally up to people what they want. If they want it changed, ask for it.
I would like to see the base salary and anything, and they don't want to put the overtime, that's fine. They can put down the total amount they made, the base salary, we can figure out the rest.
It's a good thing to bring up during the budget process before next year's cycle.
Yeah, good.
Blue.
Dana actually just made my point. I believe the police earnings includes any details, and those details are paid for by whoever wants those details. So it's actually not coming out of tax dollar.
Right.
It's their salary, and if they can get $300,000 overtime, waving a flag all day, it's paid for by whoever needs that flag waved.
Right.
And
And
it should be
we know
broken
that,
down. It
so we wanna
absolutely
know
should
that
be
on
broken
the
down.
And please don't misunderstand that I'm complaining that
No.
they're doing that. I just would
I
like to
have
see why.
friends on the force, and he talked to me about why it's posted, and he said it's not fair. It shows that I'm making some ungodly amount of money, and I try and pick up as many details as I can to put a
Right.
roof over my head, is
Yep.
basically the way he says.
And there's no harm in that.
So, there's absolutely no harm in that. But it should be broken down
But that should be a
budgetary,
recommendation
absolutely.
of us as well. And
Right.
that's what I'm
Absolutely.
saying. If the
Yeah.
purpose is salary, that's great. If it's compensation that's paid for by the town, which may include the bonuses in the school and the other things that I sometimes understand and sometimes don't, that's great, okay? If it's paid for by outsiders, or if it's paid for by outside grants, that's another whole issue. It may be important to that person's compensation, it may increase his compensation by a third, but it's not,
But
the
we need
town's
to know
not
that.
paying.
Right, right, right.
And these are the things we just need to clarify. It's not rocket science.
Yeah.
I mean, dealing with facts is pretty easy. You can have interpretations, but if you put it down in a way people can understand it, and one number usually don't do it.
Also, I'd like to get a consensus. Do people, based on, if we can get extra details, do people find that this would be useful to have each year from the town side and the school side, this information perhaps expand a little bit?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And Ellen, one other thing is, in my mind, now that we're talking about this, so let's go back to the scenario of the $78,000. Is that $78,000 when there's a pay increase, is it based on that, or is it based on?
No.
Well, see, we don't know that. I don't even know that.
No.
Okay.
It's on base salary.
It's on base salary.
Because that money's not coming from the town, just like it was.
Right,
It's
right.
coming
But there
from-
are people on DPW that would work overtime because of snow removal and storms and all of that, so, but that's something you have to.
Okay, we good on the earnings? Very good, thank you. All right,
That's required, I'm sorry, no, we're not. That is required to be done for the town
town report
I think it's in the town
anyway.
report, that's what goes in the town report.
So it's part of that, so I think it's a further explanation, so that we know what the
Yep.
juxtaposition is between a
Not
teacher.
exactly sure what's required for the
No,
town report.
it is, but.
No, Amy, I'm
but
saying
so-
it may say salary, and somebody may pick a number off, but I
Yeah,
don't know.
hold on, let Amy finish.
I agree.
So that if we hear that, you know, person X or position X is underpaid and is only 35,000, but we get a report that says that that the salary or earnings is 70, we just want to explain what that difference is, and we ought to be clear on it.
Yeah.
It's not that it's a problem necessarily,
Right.
it's just getting our terminologies right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's all. I think we're all in agreement there. Final thought on the earnings? Larry?
I just want to continue on this for a second. I mean, it'll do justice to the folks that name are on these
Yeah.
sheets if we
Right.
explain.
Putting
I mean,
out- putting them out
Really
there, we
not
should
fair.
do
Yep.
They're under the guise that, it's not accurate. The public seems to think these are the figures that they're paying through their taxation, and it needs to be fixed.
Yeah, okay, good. Good. Next one, school insurance premiums. I forwarded an email from Christine, the school business administrator. And I had asked this, last fall when we were in the budget discussions, we had a discussion about trying to get the insurance benefits closer together on the town and the school side. And at the time when the school and the town, at least the police union, was going through the contract negotiations. And some people said, and I know Drew specifically had really said, we don't necessarily have to have the same insurance policy, but it would be nice if the policies were closer together in terms of fairness and equity across the community population, town employees and school population, and school employees. Needless to say, it didn't happen in either contract, the school or the police contract. There was no change in the health. There was change in the health plan, but in the town side, in the school side, but not in the premiums. And so I asked, because I wasn't sure, I know, let's start with the town side, because I think you can just write that on here if you want to, but I talked to Steve Fournier, and there are 51 town employees, and the split is 80-20. In other words, the employees pay 20% of their premium. There are 2 police officers in the police union that have a 90-10, so they pay 10%. So most of the employees have the 80-20, 2 have a 90-10. So I was curious, because I was confused as we were going through and reading the contract, the teacher's contract, and then also the budget book that we get from them where it talks about various things like that, what it was on the school side. And this is what Christine put together. If you go down, partway down, it says teachers hired before 2007, and then teachers hired after 2007. And I didn't know that was true for the administrators. Apparently, that's the same thing. Didn't know that. But, so it's 2 different percentages, 89, 11 if you were before 2007, and 85, 15 for teachers and administrators hired after 2007. And then if you look above that, there's variations depending on what type of employee you are. So again, I just wanted this for a piece of information. We can talk a little bit more about this now, or I know there was some interest in continuing to put forward that concept, even though we have contracts now for a number of years, still to put forward this idea that we'd like people to be slightly closer together in terms of Russ and then Dana.
Yeah, as far as the details and stuff, I'd like to wait till the school board comes on the 20th. Having us talk to ourselves who are uneducated or relying on someone we think may be educated but isn't in that role anymore. I'd rather wait and get the information, hopefully 5 days in advance of the meeting, whatever updates are, so we can come and ask the people who should know better what the questions are.
So you're saying you have questions?
I don't even know, because I would rather not have me ask Ellen questions, and which we did this last year, by the way, and we said, we both don't know. Let's go find somebody who knows something. So I'd rather wait till we end up having the school people here to go over this particulars and ask the questions, so we know from Christina and whatever.
I don't want to cut ahead of Dana, but if you've got questions specific for them before the 20th, I'm sure they'd love to have them.
Yeah, we've been chatting a little bit, but we're going to do that next. We're going to put together a list of things that we want to request. I thought this one through.
Screening everything.
Dana. But thank you for that.
My concern is, even when I was on the council, I know there was a group that came together on the town side and the school side. I think it was headed up by Becky Benvenuti. And they've done now probably 2 reports. They show why the town and the school cannot come together or should not come together on healthcare premiums and coverage. They've explained that over and over and over, because the cost would still be higher than what the current cost is separately for each entity. That's been documented, it's been shown. So I don't quite understand why we still are requesting that information. Maybe Cliff.
If I may speak to that, I think the request is not to bring it to the same insurance policy carrier or whatnot. It's to, if I understand it right, it's to make the employee contribution to the premium closer.
Okay.
Right.
Right, that's what this
Similar
explains
plan,
here. This
Similar,
is
even
explaining-
if it's different. I think
Right.
so, yes.
Exactly, yeah.
So we're not.
talking
see
about-
why we're merging.
right.
No.
It's more why
No, because we,
is the town paying 80/20 and the school is paying
Exactly.
89, whatever.
That's the message I'm hearing.
That's
Okay,
exactly
good.
it, yeah, and that's what
Yeah.
this sheet of paper explains, the different premiums.
Somehow I don't have that.
Was somebody?
I know
over
you
there?
sent it in the email, and Amy just told me the date, so I'm gonna go back and look at it and see if I can find it.
Yeah, and again, it was just for information tonight, wasn't
Okay. Can you send it?
necessary for discussion, but I thought it was important to have, and we can revisit it with the school and then with Steve later. Okay. Last thing was the budget law books, which I handed out. Can I just have a show of hands of who might still want a budget law book?
I never got one.
Amy, needs one.
I
And
loaned
Cliff.
mine out and
Right.
I need one, I don't have one.
You don't have one, you didn't get one from last year?
I got one from last year, but you haven't handed.
No,
one
not the
out.
new ones.
no, not new ones.
Oh, are
New
there
ones come out in
ones?
September.
No.
No,
Oh.
September.
Well, I guess I need
It's
another
the
one.
green one.
It's the green one,
This one.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So we need 3 more?
Yeah.
Okay.
and probably.
Yeah, we don't, I asked, we don't have a budget, you know? We do not have a
Sky's the limit
budget.
there, Dave.
There may be some old members who will
We're gonna be-
come up now.
So look, next month, we're gonna be 150% over our budget, so you watch.
And I might want to
151.
have one for Mike, too, the new guy coming on,
Right.
and maybe Judy.
No, Judy
Judy's got
doesn't.
it.
Judy's got it?
Yep.
Okay.
So we need 4.
Yep.
Very good. Okay,
Get mine
we are
back.
finally to information requests for the May 20th meeting, which we've invited Christine and Dr. Hayes, and they both have indicated in the past that they're available to come. So I think we kind of wanted to dedicate that meeting to them. And so we need to give them a heads up on what we'd like them to present to us, or get to us ahead of time and/or present at that meeting, and what questions we might have. You don't have to come up with all the questions right now, but Russ?
Yeah,
Russ will do
I'd
it.
just like to have them, you know, if we could, to get some year-to-date performance on how they're doing against the major line items you shared with us before, and what implications have them let us, educate us as to what the implications of that are for the rest of this year in general, and next year's budget, do they see? And there's a term I don't know if we've used before, maybe we have, I'll call it risks and opportunities. Seeing a set of numbers at one point in time is great. It's hopefully a fact if the accounting's okay. But the next question we should be asking ourselves, or the managers of the area should be asking, is what are the risks against this forecast on expense? What are the opportunities on that? Where do they balance out? You know, the issue about we've overspent legal expense 50,000, but we're going to save 50,000 on roads, so we have that covered. That's great. No overall exposure. So just getting into the dialogue of seeing what you're seeing and educating us on how we doing year to date. Are there any risks or opportunities you see for next year's budget, this year's budget?
You mean for
That
next
we
year's
should be
budget?
aware
You
of.
mean the 2013-14 budget? and
Whatever it is.
Beyond?
Well, I mean, it still confuses me going through the tax rates, but I know we've already voted on next year's budget, so we know what that budget is, but yet our tax rate's affected by what the actuals are this year. So if we underspend in the town or in the school, that may come back as a credit on next year's budget. So though we're thinking about expenses in the future, underspending by, $200,000 in a particular category this year may have an effect that says, well, should that happen in the next 2 years? Because the budgets that are out there were based on spending that 200, and if there's no longer a need, then we already see a $200,000 opportunity in next year's budget that we didn't know was there. That's the only place I'd like to.
And that would reflect special needs that you were speaking about earlier. You're going to be hit hard this year.
Right, or you're scrambling, but waiting for next year, there'll be another $500,000 in expenses that we're finding ways to cover this year, but next year, we don't have it.
And I think we knew about that going into next year. I mean, I think some of that has been brought up. So it's more the up-to-date as the town side did for us at the last meeting. And just kind of where are we? Thank you, State of the Union, yes.
And
I like that.
in the status of, obviously, the big ticket items too, in terms of the discussions with the school. And
So you're looking for like an update on,
yeah, I think the update on the budget side, the current budget, how things go on, and
Not
maybe
400 pages, but
Yeah.
I think the most useful thing I find is Steve's put in a one-page summary, even though you need a microphone.
yeah, that one-page expense report.
Whatever it is, magnifying glass to see it. And, beyond that, I don't want to know on page 42, line item 17, that we were $6 ahead. We'll get there if we ever need to. But having a 1 or 2 page summary of the 15 or 20 major line expenses.
Yeah, we need to start, because we haven't had it in the past, and that'll be a great start. And so I think the current budget, what are things going into the next budget, and then what's the current big ticket issues? There's school repairs going on. How does that affect current operations, and how is that looking for big tickets? Obviously, the school.
And
And then leading into
For-
projections.
I mean, obviously,
Where are we
we're not
at?
looking for definitive answers. We just conversation again, just keeping
It's
it
subject to change.
going along.
Ellen, would that also include what we discussed earlier about the head titles on these spreadsheets?
I think
On the
that's-
earnings, you mean?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
that's
that could
been
just be a
discussed
separate-
enough.
Yeah, that
No, I
could be a
mean,
separate.
would that something we want you to go back and include that as part of a question?
But we're not going to discuss it at the next meeting. You can just,
No.
that change can just get made, yeah, yeah. And I'll convey that in an email too, just so
That
it's.
was my point about the annual reports. Yours says salary. If you look at the town stuff, it's gross proceeds.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Or it's different.
Right,
So
maybe
I
it can
don't
be the
know.
same.
My
Don't
point,
that be
Amy,
nice?
is
Yeah.
by law, what are people putting, if they're saying this sheet needs to be in the annual report, my question is, okay, why, show me where? And 2, show me the definition.
What
Right.
do it
Because
mean?
if the town's saying gross proceeds and you're saying salary, but you really mean gross proceeds, and they're meaning annual salary rate, not expense,
Yay.
The more we can use common language and common definitions, the better we'll all be.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Dave,
One
and
of the
sorry,
things-
Blue, I think I keep missing, sorry.
One of the things I think just with the school, I mean, and I know that we haven't really felt the impact yet, but, with the sequester and some of the things that came out of DC, I mean, what is the impact going to be in a year, 2 year? I mean, will there be impacts that we don't? That's my point. I mean,
0, nada.
so, but
Hold on,
There's a
hold on.
school
These-
building fund. So,
Blue, were you, I didn't want to.
No, I'm good, yeah.
Okay, Blue, sorry.
I actually had kind of a specific question that maybe they can bring to the May 20th. It kind of ties the earnings and the health insurance. I would like to know how many employees are under each
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good, I had that question.
longevity,
Yeah.
no longevity, been here a day, been here 150 days. It would kind of help see, okay, the health insurance costs this much because we have 95% of the population of teachers have the longevity of being there over 20 years, or whatever it is. I mean, I know some teachers I've had are still there.
That I had that are still there.
Strangely,
And I'm older
that
than
won't
you.
change the health insurance. What you'll find is that the highly paid teachers, their health insurance is only a small percentage of their total compensation.
Right, but it would
Now,
help.
Someone making on the low end, maybe having 80% of their salary in benefits.
Correct, correct. But it helps break it down to see, okay, we have this many teachers that are getting 89%, this many getting 85, part-times, paras, whatever. Kind of just breaks it down and gives you a little bit and ties in their earnings, which goes back to we want to have their longevity on their earnings or how many years they've been there. It would kind of tie it all together so you can see.
Yeah, and I
broken
think she
down.
can do that by May. I know that fiscal analysis I talked about for the contract, I know that can't be put together until August or something, so, and the number of employees, because I know that's going to jump around once the contract kicks in, I think in July 1st, I'm not sure, but we'll ask.
It is, well, the fiscal year begins July 1st. I
Right.
believe that's the open enrollment time
Right,
as
so-
well. And
Yeah.
there's a lot that the whole
Might
district
shift.
is curious, not just the budget committee, about who is going to elect to not take the insurance and
Right.
and get the buyback.
Right.
And how that all settles out. It could be a very good advantage to the community financially.
Yeah, and that's the fiscal analysis that they do in August, so that, yeah, very good. Okay. Anything else requesting, and things might pop up, between now and then, but,
I think it's the update to get us up to speed, as Steve did a couple of meetings ago, and it's just really to start that conversation.
Whether we like it or not, quarterly, we should, get some real information.
Darn it.
all right.
Well, I'd love to answer some of these questions right now, but I'm not gonna.
No.
So,
No.
see you on May 20th.
That's no
No,
longer
you
your
don't
job.
have to feel that you have to. I
Right.
mean, that's the thing. There are
Other people,
heads of
Well,
state
and
that will.
nor would I do as good of a job as they would in preparation and thoroughness. So, but that was just
You
my
have
my
your budget
plug
committee
for
hat
the
on
The 20th.
for
Great.
for tuning in on May 20th.
Any other business?
No.
Next meeting is May 20th. You'll note that that's the third Monday. We're going to be chaotic in our monthly because the 27th is Memorial Day, and I wasn't going to be around.
I'm gonna try, but
Might
as
not be
another board that I sit in, that
Okay.
conflicts with the third Monday.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is
Ellen, would
that-
you discuss the meeting time? I know sometimes we do meet at 7 and sometimes we meet at
6:30.
6:30.
Right.
Does anybody have a preference one way or the other?
The earlier the better.
I think I would prefer that we stick with 7 until we get into the really busy budget, and sometimes then we have to adjust this because we have so many meetings and we get burned out.
And then
I
we would,
think that's what happened,
Yeah.
is it gave us a
Yeah.
little bit more of a break for those of us
Right.
that, were screaming home, gotta,
Yeah.
right. And I think
Never
it's
mind feeding
good to
ourselves,
be
but-
consistent
7,
with
yeah.
other,
Yeah.
to be consistent with other boards too. 7 o'clock. Is
The
that when they
7
start?
PM.
Yeah.
Motion to
also-
adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.